views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
I would categorize my mood as very frustrated.
Tonight on Politics Now, trouble on the river, more cuts announced on the Colorado. Bigger ones loom, but states can't agree on what they'll be. And
we have secure elections in Nevada. Our current Secretary of State, Barbara Sagaski, has done a phenomenal job.
A discussion with Democratic Secretary of State candidate Cisco Aguilar, tweaks he would make to Nevada elections and the business licensing process. Plus,
this is just the last step on the rung of recovery from COVID.
We explore what Southern Nevada is getting out of the newly passed Inflation Reduction Act.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm John Langler, and we start with water. Southern Nevada's water chief is frustrated with other states on the Colorado River who, he says, are not taking conservation seriously. It comes after a federal shortage was declared on the Colorado River for a second straight year. Lake Mead and Lake Powell are both about 27% full. That means Nevada and Arizona have their allotment from Lake Mead cut even more. Nevada already uses less than its allotment, but the Department of Interior asked all 7 states along the river to come up with a way to cut their water use by an additional 15 to 30%.
The circumstances we face will require swift actions and increased water conservation in every state from every sector. We all have a responsibility to ensure that the water we do have available is used with maximum efficiency, and that additional conservation will occur expeditiously.
Nevada and Arizona say they did put forward a plan to do that. However, other states rejected it. Critics say those other states aren't taking the situation seriously. The I-Team's George Knapp talked with Southern Nevada Water Authority General Manager John Ensminger about those next steps and what those states need to do.
Let's start this way. Mr. Ensminger, we saw your letter yesterday in advance of the events of today, and it sure sounded like you were kind of ticked off and disgusted. Am I assessing that correctly?
I would categorize my mood as very frustrated.
What went wrong at those meetings?
Not enough people taking the situation seriously.
I mean, not willing to give up anything at all?
Little to nothing.
You've been, Nevada's been warning about this for a long time. You have been warning about this day for a long time. Does it feel like Judgment Day has finally arrived, or at least the first Judgment Day?
Well, we didn't hear a whole lot of judgment coming out of the federal government today. So unfortunately, it feels like another day going by without substantial progress.
I saw a release from Arizona water officials. They sound about as disgusted as you in the fact that other states aren't getting hit with the same kind of sanctions, I guess, water sanctions. You used a phrase, I forget what the words you used, water profiteers or drought profiteers. What do you mean?
Well, historically, and even in the recent past, we saw water transactions on this river for, between $200 and $300 an acre foot. And throughout this summer, we've been seeing agricultural districts propose selling an acre foot of water for between $1,500 and $2,300. So it's hard not to see that as, taking advantage of a very dire situation.
You and I have talked about this before. For example, Imperial Valley. We heard references by these federal officials today about certain agricultural uses. Imperial Valley, where they're growing alfalfa to export to China, a very water-intensive crop. We also know in Arizona, they grow a lot of melons down there. All of this stuff taking place in the desert, which doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Well, ordinarily, I stay out of my neighbor's business, but when you have a math problem and 80% of the water use is in agriculture and 80% of that 80% is for forage crops, which are largely exported, it's hard not to see how that's not part of the solution.
Nevada's in pretty good shape compared to these other states because of policies that your agency put into place a lot of years ago, right?
Absolutely. This situation isn't sneaking up on us. We've been preparing for 20 years for exactly this situation. And because of 20 years of conservation and because of our investments in critical infrastructure at Lake Mead, we're going to be okay even in a scenario where the federal government can't release water downstream to California, Arizona, and Mexico. So, yeah, I want to be part of the solution on the river. But at the end of the day, we're safe and secure even if the other states don't take sufficient actions.
Now, some of the things that drought money could be used on includes upgrading Glen Canyon Dam and water recycling programs like Nevada's, and then using those programs in other states. Nevada Senators Catherine Cortez Masto and Jackie Rosen sent a letter to the Department of Interior this week, and they also asked other states to do their part. In the letter, they say those other states failed to help reach a deal on the cuts on the Colorado, and the senators urged them to act quickly and adopt some of the suggestions laid out by Ensminger, as you heard. That includes water recycling and, again, fixing Glen Canyon Dam. Governor Steve Sisolak says if he wins re-election, he would take more steps to protect in-state abortion providers and out-of-state patients. The governor has already signed an executive order on this, which says Nevada will not help other states trying to prosecute women who travel to Nevada for an abortion. For that to become law, though, it would have to go through the state legislature. Sisolak's Republican challenger, as you know, is Joe Lombardo, and he has indicated he would overturn Governor Sisolak's executive order. However, he hasn't firmly committed to doing that yet. Nevada's race for Secretary of State features a candidate who says the 2020 election was stolen. That person is Republican Jim Marchant. His Democratic opponent is Cisco Aguilar, an attorney for the Andre Agassi Foundation. This week we spoke with him about why he is running and elections. Why run for Secretary of State?
Secretary of State is an interesting position because it has two main responsibilities. One is you're a regulator of elections, and two, you are the administrator for corporate filings. As an attorney at Agassi, managing the corporate filings for the years that I was there, it's pretty difficult sometimes to use that system. And it makes me think about all the small business owners in Las Vegas that have to use the system on an annual basis. And they shouldn't have to hire an attorney to use that system. It should be logical, it should be functional, it should be easy to use and understandable, but still get the information that the state needs for a business to remain compliant. And then on the election side, you are a regulator. You are supposed to be a neutral person advocating for all voters in Nevada. It's not whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. It's giving access to every Nevadan the opportunity to exercise their voice and to be heard.
We'll talk about the election component in a moment because there's a lot to that. But just getting back quickly to the business and the licensure and all of that, those aspects of the Secretary of State that office handles. I've used the website before. You're talking about business owners and the challenges they deal with. What would you like to implement to make it easier and more user-friendly to just do your business?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to a statement my contract professor made in law school. He goes, don't ever try to overcomplicate a contract. Use plain language people understand, because if people understand it, you're going to be able to get to a point of agreement quicker than if you're using fancy or technical language that not everybody understands on a daily basis. I think if we review the processes that are in the system now and try to make them more logical, I think that'll make people happier.
Let's now switch to elections. It's gotten a lot of attention recently for obvious reasons. Allegations by Republicans of fraud and challenges to the last major election here back in 2020. Some counties in the interim have moved to hand counting, most notably Nye County. Should the legislature pass a rule to prevent that in future elections? And I guess more importantly, are you a fan of this hand counting change in Nye County and others? No, I'm not, and there's specific reasons why. I think hand counting, there's a reason why automation exists. One, it goes to the fiscal responsibility of it. It's efficient, it's accurate. We have secure elections in Nevada. Our current Secretary of State, Barbara Sagaski, has done a phenomenal job of ensuring our processes are secure, transparent, and open. And understanding her perspective, understanding why she made the decisions she made, is exactly why I want to run for Secretary of State. Somebody needs to be in that position that is neutral and understands that this position is not about party, it's about the state of Nevada and Nevadans who want to exercise their right to vote. So. Well, your opponent in the race has certainly made allegations, repeated ones, that elections are rigged in Nevada and would implement changes of his own if he were elected. What How do you convince voters that they're not rigged?
I think it's twofold. One is understanding what the current secretary has done to investigate every instance of alleged fraud and her conclusions on why there was no fraud or fraud did not exist. Second is our court system. You know, being an attorney, I believe in the rule of law, I believe in our court system, and I believe that our judges have acted in an impartial way to say that fraud has not existed in our election cycles.
You can see more of our interview with Mr. Aguilar, including why he is not supporting voter ID or ranked choice voting proposals. That's at 8newsnow.com. And we have reached out to his opponent, Jim Marchant, for an interview. So far, his campaign has not responded to our repeated requests. All right, what's in it for Southern Nevadans? Next on Politics Now, we break down what's in the recently signed Inflation Reduction Act, including some of that drought money we just referenced. Plus, electric vehicle tax credits. But is the cost of an electric vehicle still too high? Stay tuned.
Remember those summers that were just so perfectly summer?
Brian, come on!
The people, the places, those moments are still out there.
I'm Brian.
Waiting to be found.
Ready, Brian?
Summer won't last forever, so make the most of it during Toyota's national sales event.
Right now, get 1.9% APR for 48 months on a new 2022 Camry or RAV4. Plus, every new Toyota comes with Toyota Care, our no-cost maintenance plan. Visit your local Toyota dealer today.
Come in today.
Toyota, let's go places.
Detect this. Living with HIV, I learned I could stay undetectable with fewer medicines. That's why I switched to Dovato. Dovato is for some adults who are starting HIV-1 treatment or replacing their current HIV-1 regimen. Detect this. No other complete HIV pill uses fewer medicines to help keep you undetectable than Dovato.
Detect this. Most HIV pills contain 3 or 4 medicines. Dovato is as effective with just 2.
Research shows people who take HIV treatment as prescribed and get to and stay undetectable can no longer transmit HIV through sex. Don't take Dovato if you're allergic to its ingredients or if you take dofetilide. Taking Dovato with dofetilide can cause serious or life-threatening side effects. Hepatitis B can become harder to treat while on Dovato. Don't stop Dovato without talking to your doctor, as your hepatitis B may worsen or become life-threatening. Serious or life-threatening side effects can occur, including allergic reactions, lactic acid buildup, and liver problems. If you have a rash or other allergic reaction symptoms, stop Dovato and get medical help right away. Tell your doctor if you have kidney or liver problems, or if you are, may be, or plan to be pregnant. Dovato may harm your unborn baby. Use effective birth control while on Dovato. Do not breastfeed while taking Dovato. Most common side effects are headache, nausea, diarrhea, trouble sleeping, tiredness, and anxiety.
Detect this. I stay undetectable with fewer medicines. Ask your doctor about switching to Dovato.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
President Joe Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law on Tuesday. Democrats say it will lower energy and health care costs. Republicans oppose the legislation. They call it a tax and spending spree. Natalie Brand takes a closer look.
President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law Tuesday, calling the mammoth climate, health, and tax legislation historic.
Let me say from the start, with this law, the American people won and the special interests lost.
Billed as the nation's biggest ever single climate investment, it directs nearly $400 billion in climate and energy programs, including tax credits and incentives, to cut emissions by roughly 40% over the next 8 years. Fred Krupp of the Environmental Defense Fund says the money comes at a crucial time.
We're at a tipping point where the adoption of electric cars, electric trucks, solar, wind power, battery storage is almost there, but these incentives will get us there.
With less than 3 months to November's midterm elections, the president plans to hit the road in the coming weeks to explain what's in the landmark legislation. Democrats say the new law will reduce costs for seniors by expanding Medicare's power to negotiate the price of prescription drugs, though initially starting in 2026, affecting only 10 medications.
The motion is adopted.
The bill passed with no GOP support. Nonpartisan analysts say it's not likely to do much to put a dent in the high inflation Americans have faced.
Democrats, more than any other majority in history, are addicted to spending other people's money, regardless of what we as a country can afford.
Democrats say the legislation will pay for itself and cut the federal deficit by raising revenue through increased tax enforcement and a 15% minimum corporate tax. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
All three of Nevada's House Democrats and both Democratic senators voted for the bill. Congresswoman Dina Titus says it will help Southern Nevada with water and keeping drug prices down. How does this affect Southern Nevada?
You know, we're in the middle of a 1,200-year drought. We're the sunniest, we're the hottest, we're the driest. And so anything that affects climate change is going to have a super impact on us. And it affects people personally with tax breaks for weatherizing their homes or for buying electric cars. But it also affects the community by investing in projects along the Colorado River, like recycling or storage of water, so that we don't run out. And you've seen those bathtub rings out there. Second, it helps in the area of medical assistance. We have a high rate of uninsured in the state. And now those that have Obamacare will be able to continue their subsidies for 3 more years. And it allows Medicare to negotiate drugs, because we pay much higher prices for drugs than any place else, and in Europe, for example. So this will cap your drug cost at $2,000 a year, and it will allow Medicare to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies.
There are some taxes that are included in this. Your opposition, the Republicans, are raising concerns. You know, they're suggesting there's all this inflation, things are more expensive. Why tax more?
Nobody, and all the pundits and all of the researchers have confirmed this and said that the Republicans are not telling the truth. Nobody who makes under $400,000 a year is getting taxed. Nobody. The new taxes are on the big corporations who make over $1 billion a year. And these are corporations who brag about not paying taxes. They're the ones who need to pay their share. And with the savings from Medicare being able to negotiate drug prices, this is actually going to bring down the deficit gradually over the next decade.
So when you hear, again, some of the opposition raising concerns about, for example, the extra IRS agents that are being hired, and the concerns about armed IRS agents tracking down money, and all sorts of other thoughts and so forth. Obviously, you're familiar with those, what they're bringing up here. What is the reality of where the money is going to go?
Well, the reality is you are going to hire more IRS agents, but they have been tasked very specifically by the head of Treasury and by Yellen that they will go after those big corporations who can hide that money, billionaires who can hide that money. They're not going after the individuals who've never been audited to get little amounts of money. This is to go after those folks who have not paid their share.
Congresswoman Titus's Republican opponent in the upcoming election is Mark Robertson, the colonel. He says America, quoting here, America needs less spending, not more. We're dealing with record inflation because of wasteful spending in Washington. He continues, the dishonestly named Inflation Reduction Act, dishonestly named, won't do anything to help Americans struggling with the weight of inflation. All right, also included, we talked about electric vehicle tax credits. Is the cost of an electric vehicle now still too high? That's coming up here on Politics Now.
Nevada is suffering because of reckless Washington spending. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto voted to allow hundreds of millions of dollars of COVID relief funds to be wasted on frivolous projects not in Nevada. A luxury resort in Florida, soccer stadium in New Jersey, skiing in Iowa, a poet in Connecticut, French operas in Washington, D.C. We need help in Nevada, not silly spending in other states. Tell Senator Cortez Masto to start voting against wasteful spending to stop inflation.
This isn't your typical runaway bride scene. It's a Nissan sales event ad. Now that's something I can commit to. His RAV4 doesn't even have as many standard safety features as this Rogue.
Now shop our inventory of certified pre-owned vehicles.
Love may be forever, but these offers are not.
Bad check fees, credit card fees, late rent fees, and those huge payday loan fees. Don'tBeBroke.com can safely lend you up to $5,000 in minutes to avoid those fees. No collateral and free to apply. Apply online at don'tbebroke.com.
Our desert summer heat can be deadly, but learning the warning signs of heat stroke can save a life, maybe your own. This 8 News Now summer safety tip is sponsored by Landmark Recovery.
Best Reviews has an unbiased team that researches products in real-world situations to give reliable recommendations on just about everything.
Call that a plasma sword?
For the best reviews, go to bestreviews.com. Seriously, before you buy anything, ever.
You're watching Politics Now.
One of the main ways Democrats plan to cut emissions are with electric vehicle tax credits. They're for up to $7,500 on new cars and up to $4,000 on used electric cars. Now, critics say the law won't give the EV market the boost it needs because a lot of cars won't qualify. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says that's intentional.
Part of the design of this bill is not to support any electric vehicle, but to support U.S.-made or North America-made electric vehicles.
Washington, D.C. correspondent Alexander Limon joins us to break down the debate over these tax credits. Alex Limon joining us from the Washington, D.C. Bureau. Alex, what are the new parameters for cars to qualify for these new EV tax credits?
Hey, John. Well, in addition to there being limits on which cars can qualify for these tax credits, there are also limits on who can qualify to get them. And so under the new rules that were passed by the Inflation Reduction Act, vehicles have caps as far as how much they can cost. So any sedans that cost up to $55,000 and SUVs that cost up to $80,000 that are on that approved list can qualify for the tax credits. And they also have to have the final manufacturing in the U.S. or I'm sorry, in North America, actually. So the final manufacturing has to happen in North America in order for the cars to qualify. Now, as far as the individuals making up to $150,000 a year can qualify, and for couples who file jointly, that's up to $300,000 a year.
It's interesting, and you also mentioned there, Alex, the cost of some electric cars, and they're pretty darn expensive. Will this help make EVs a little more affordable?
You know, obviously that's going to be subjective and kind of depend on the individual or the family, but the list that the Biden administration put out includes more than 30 vehicles that are expected to qualify, and there is a wide range in the cost of these vehicles, and some of them are on the much more affordable scale of things. When you add to that the tax credit that's available, again, up to $7,500 for new cars and up to $4,000 for used cars, it definitely can put it within reach for some people and some families. But what is important to keep in mind that on top of those savings, people actually do save a lot of money on not having to pay for fuel. So right now, this year, the average cost to charge an electric vehicle at home per week, again, this is on average, is about $10 to $15 a week.
There's certainly been some criticism on this from the auto industry, from advocacy groups. What are they saying?
Yeah, so from the auto industry, what we've heard is that the great majority of electric vehicles that are on the market right now won't qualify for these tax credits. Again, the government put out a list of about 30 cars or so that they expect will qualify next year. And so there's a vast majority of cars out there that won't qualify. And the administration says that's intentional. This tax credit is meant for, again, vehicles that are manufactured in North America, and it's not meant to cover very expensive luxury electric vehicles.
And that was Alex Limon from Washington, D.C. Nevada's also been working on adding charging station. There's the so-called electric highway being constructed between Las Vegas and Reno. Will Nevada's youth show up in the upcoming election? We'll have a new look at the growing number of 20-somethings becoming politically engaged on Politics Now.
Findlay Automotive began with one dealership in 1961. Today we have 18 locations across the Vegas Valley. We have more cars, trucks, and SUVs than any other dealer group in Nevada. No matter where you are in the valley, you're never far from Findlay.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
Adam Laxalt.
Adam Laxalt who?
It's Adam Laxalt who was caught calling Roe versus Wade a joke.
Roe v. Wade was always a joke.
As Nevada's Attorney General, Laxalt signed onto multiple efforts to restrict abortion access. And he's made it clear he wants to make abortion illegal.
Having Adam Laxalt represent Nevada, there's nothing funny about that.
I'm Catherine Cortez Masto, and I approve this message.
We're the lifelong local, and we're the welcome wagon. In 1972, we saw our very first patient. Ever since, we've been expanding our services, locations, and our team to bring quality healthcare to you, our neighbors. For 50 years, we've called Las Vegas home, and we couldn't be prouder. Thank you for trusting us with your health. Southwest Medical, 50 years of community care.
You're a champion of multiple fantasy leagues. Your dominant reign is unprecedented. To watch over this dynastic empire, you scored a TV that's unbeatable in every measurable visual category. The only thing that can hand this fancy TV a bitter defeat? Internet from the wrong provider. You could have gotten Cox Internet with America's fastest internet download speeds, because good things deserve good internet.
Finley Automotive began with one dealership in 1961. Today we have 18 locations across the Vegas Valley. We have more cars, trucks, and SUVs than any other dealer group in Nevada. No matter where you are in the valley, you're never far from Finley.
You're watching Politics Now.
The Justice Department has been asked to file a redacted version of the affidavit which allowed the FBI inside the former President Trump's home last week. A federal magistrate judge is giving the DOJ a week to propose those redactions. This comes after attorneys representing news organizations asked a judge to make parts of that document public. The Justice Department says making the document public could compromise its investigation into former President Trump. A nonprofit says more youth in Nevada are registered to vote. Circle from Tufts University in the Northeast says the number of people aged 18 to 24 registered to vote here is 28% higher than it was 4 years ago. Since 2020, it's 20% higher. It also ranked the Nevada Senate race as the third most likely race to be impacted by the youth vote. NASA is continuing to commit resources to studying UFOs. A report from Space.com says the agency will go full force into those investigations. NASA says its main goals are to lay out the best ways to collect observations in the future. The agency also wants to figure out how to advance our understanding of these sightings. Space.com reports the study will begin in the fall, should last about 9 months. That'll do it for us here on Politics Now. We thank you so much for joining us this week. Stay up to date online with all the political news by going to 8newsnow.com, and you can join us here every Saturday. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.